This is Bradford Donald Keller Townsend on the Monday, the 8th of October, 2018. This video will be concerning a book that I'm on the third time reading, and it's Anticipations, annotated, of the reaction of mechanical and scientific progress upon human life and thought, by Herbert George Wells. It was published originally in 1902. Herbert George Wells was born in 1866 and died in 1946. So he had a relatively long life, a little above average of 80 years. He had a difficult childhood in that he said his growth was stunted because his father wasn't able to provide a steady income for the family. He was a professional cricket player. He had an inheritance and had a sporting goods shop and novelty shop that didn't do well. He was able to attend a good, what we would call private school here in the United States. He lived during the era of my great-grandparents. I was fortunate to have good relations or conversations with my great-grandparents who experienced the transition from horses as the primary transportation, and they had trains, but they were still building out a lot of the railroad network that later, at least in North America, half of it or so has probably been removed again, which is very unfortunate. My great-grandmother liked to tell me the story of her father was a riverboat, steam boat captain and owner who took bulk goods up and down the Ohio River, the Mississippi River, into the Gulf of Mexico and beyond. He was a German immigrant. So she was the first, as she was a very beautiful young woman, was the first woman in Madison, Indiana, which is on the Ohio River, down a ways a little bit from Cincinnati, to get to ride in what today we call an automobile. I think they called them motorized carriages or something like that back then. And then so she saw not only the first vehicles with internal combustion engines, but was able to fly to Florida on a on a holiday in a jet, all in a lifetime, from horses to jets. She witnessed that transition. So they did have trains and telegraph type systems and ticker tapes when she was born in the 1800s. But it's just amazing to me that such a huge change. In 1902, when he wrote his book, Anticipations, he was doubtful of the practicality of large-scale aviation, as he thought the human body didn't know if it could take the stresses. Other than that, almost everything that he predicted came true. This book is what made H.G. Wells the extremely prolific writer. He said this was the book that really launched his career and made him a success, both financially and in every way. He also, and then his second biggest achievement, in his own words, he wrote the most successful biology textbook of his generation or epoch. As we know, quality textbooks with the pictures in them, the high quality drawings and photographs, can run into the hundreds of dollars in today's money. So those two books made him financially secure and independent. People who grow up in hardship and hunger, he had to go days where he was hungry but couldn't eat any food. His height and health were stunted because of the hardships of his youth. are very driven people, sometimes as adults. That's why even when he became financially secure from his biology textbook that he co-authored and from this book, which was a smash hit at the time and now forgotten, I'll just cover some of the points in the book. I may follow up with a part two, but he made a really good point about locomotion and trains, and he anticipated cities like London might grow to as big as 20 million inhabitants because the dependability of the steam engine to bring fresh produce in from the hinterlands or even from other countries carried on steamships and then on trains allows dense concentrations of people. The steam engine was a huge, stupendous invention and unprecedented in the growth of the human population and the change of lifestyles. And he talks about bicycles, how they like triple the commuting potential distance of, let's say, a clerk to go work at an insurance firm, about the possibility of elevated trains, subways, which were all, they didn't have them in 1902. The high impact of and change in lifestyles of communications and of telephones, of highway. They didn't have highways and many asphalt paved roads in 1902. So from, let's say, 1902 to the year 2002, over that short 100 years, let's say you take an average generation of 25 years, of only 4 generations, such a huge change. If you were to go back 100 years, or say to 1902, more than a little over 100 years, and go to England of 1902 and see the horses and the carriages, the lack of roads, the lack of rail, the illiteracy and the dirty masses, it was really something. Another insight he had was the rise of Germany. At that time, Germany was getting to be about on par with the United Kingdom as an industrial productive power, and they had the advantage of learning from the Benelux countries, the Dutch, the Belgians, the British, who were the first to industrialize, and the French. So their equipment was actually more efficient and newer than a lot of the machine tools and built-up plants and factories that the British had. And there was a resentment and hatred of Germans. They called them the Huns, and it had many other pejorative terms for Germans, and saw them as a rival. And Germany had expanded, having colonies in Africa, and saw them as a competitor to compete for resources. He also predicted the lot that Germany, which you remember had defeated France in approximately 1871. France had been the most admired military power for generations, and was highly respected and well organized, and having the first real draft merit-based army where they could bring huge amounts of men and promote people based on their merit and courage and intelligence and that type of thing, and compete for promotions versus your family having wealth and usually from land, and then paying a certain set amount of money to give you a commission in the armed forces, and being from like the landed class. He saw that if you have the French and the British empires on one side and the giant populations of Poland and Russia and all the other Eastern Slavic peoples, that Germany would be squeezed between the Western well-established imperial powers with all their natural resources, the mines of South Africa, the mines and rubber and all the things you could get from Indochina, which was half a dozen countries, not just Vietnam, that the French controlled, huge swaths of Africa, and they could get manpower as well and labor to free up, Frenchmen and British English speakers to go fight, for the British Empire and for the French empires. And even if the Germans were very ingenious and disciplined and making a high quality military with their army and navy, that they would just be overwhelmed by the massive resources of the Slavs of Poland and Russia and the East, and of the great empires of France and Britain. He mentioned class. He talked about a new leisure shareholder. There's a French word for it, rentier, where you don't do productive work per se. Maybe you made a fortune speculating from inside information in the financial markets, and then live off of bond income, dividend income, or you buy rental properties, apartment buildings and things, and then you do have to spend some time managing these investments, but it's really more of a part-time job, and have your time to do with what you want. And then he went into all the different types of people in the leisure class. Some would be religious, some would be hedonistic, and some might do productive things as hobby scientists and such, or architects. But this new class that was landed gentry, that's the new shareholder rentier class. He also discussed ménage. That's the French word. He liked to use French words as loan words in his writing throughout his life. That's the members of a household. He saw that the traditional family that had developed in the Victorian 1800s era was coming to an end, and you'd have all types of permutations, gay households, men living with more than one wife. He saw the trend that many women would choose not to have children and want to have careers, and didn't want to take the burdens of children, that some people would have one or two children and treat them as pets, like a family dog. And then that there would be a core class of mechanic, engineer, technicians that would probably maintain the traditional family lifestyle, be temperate in their lifestyle and hardworking, as a large expanded engineer, accountant, technician class of people that would grow into the multiple millions that would by and large maintain traditional family type arrangements. But the abyss, the class of the unemployable masses, which he said would grow because of their ability to get food and healthcare and other sustenance from the new, wealthier, mechanized society, would grow. And that the communists sometimes called this the lumpen proletariat. These people who can't find regular work, or they're just unemployable, they have bad interpersonal skills and quarrel with people, or they have health issues, or they have addiction issues with drugs, alcohol, or just what in sociology they call indolent. They just don't like to work and prefer just a minimum subsistence lifestyle, and that this would mass would grow, which I found interesting. So there were many ideas, pretty much everything. He was spot on. He talked about all the different military improvements and advancements that were going to be happening because of mechanization. In 1902, the British Army private and lance corporal typically was illiterate, and they took pride in their literacy. The army that fought the Boer War in South Africa and the colonial professional troops, generally the enlisted men, which is kind of hard to fathom today, were illiterate and many times were malnourished and were quite small compared to today. And he noted on that, and that the military and society in general would have to invest heavily in education because the military would be mechanized with all types of machines, transportation vehicles and fighting vehicles and aircraft. He did see the use of military aircraft for reconnaissance and bombing. So they would need all kinds of technical type people, and that the need for all these technical mechanic type people would require a major retooling and renovating of the educational system, and that these people who had the basics of science, about basics of chemistry and physics and math beyond arithmetic, would, having millions of these people in society, he hoped would make a more rational, decent civilization. That's all I have for right now. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.